This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Hello and welcome to Working Like Dogs on Pet Life Radio. Thank you for joining us and for following Working Like Dogs on Instagram and Facebook. We're your hosts. My name is Marcie Davis, and my co-host is my adorable service dog, Lovey. And we're thrilled to be with you today to talk about our favorite subject, working dogs and working animals. And today we're going to be visiting with acclaimed poet and author Rachel Rose. And Rachel's going to come in today to visit with us about her new book, The Dog Lover Unit. So come right back after these quick messages as we welcome Rachel Rose to the show.
Sit, stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Molly, here's your dinner. Zeus, that's not your food.
Don't let that happen to your precious cat. Elevate your cat's eating experience with the Cat Tree Tray. The Cat Tree Tray keeps your cat's food off the floor and conveniently located on the cat tree. It's the perfect way to eat. It's a beautiful wrought iron tray that easily attaches to your cat tree and keeps dogs and other critters out of your cat's dish. A must for multi-pet households. There's a 6-inch tray for large bowls and a 4-inch tray for smaller bowls. Purchase your Cat Tree Tray today. Go right now to cattreetray.com. That's cattreetray.com. CATTREETRAY.com.
Let's talk pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Working Like Dogs on Pet Life Radio. Hello, Rachel, and welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted to have a chance to talk to you about my book and about dogs, my favorite subject.
Good. We share that. It's my favorite subject, too. Yeah, and we're so excited about, and I love the title of your book, The Dog Lover Unit, Lessons Encouraged from the World's Canine Cops. So what a wonderful title and wonderful book that you've created. And I have to say, Rachel, when I was reading about you and your wonderful work, I saw a lot of accolades that you've received for your poetry. So start out by telling us, how did you decide to write a book about these turbocharged police dogs, as you describe them in the book, and their law enforcement handlers? How did that happen?
Oh, my gosh. Well, it was the last book that I thought I could write, but I was just so drawn to the dogs, and I kept hearing stories about the rescues that they would do and, the apprehensions that they did and how valuable they were. And I really wanted to learn more, because all my life, the bond that I've had with my dogs has been one of the most profound in my life. And I thought, what would that be like if you not only have that bond, but you're with your dog 24/7 and your life depends on that bond? And so I was so curious and so interested, but I was also really scared, to enter that world. And I'm a shy, introverted poet and a mom, and it was just way beyond my comfort level. But once I got the idea, I thought, well, I can't let this go. I'd love to, read this book, and it's not out there. I'd love to get these stories. And what I love most as a writer is entering worlds that are not like mine and understanding how other people live and think. And so it just kind of stayed with me and wouldn't let me go. And step by step, I pursued it.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you did. And I have to say, when I first was reading about you and seeing that you were a poet, And I thought about the Jodie Foster movie where she's the Carl Sagan book. I'm forgetting the name of the movie, but in it where she goes to outer space and she says they should have sent a poet instead of me. And I've always and so I thought about that from that movie and thought about you, and I'm like, how perfect that it's a poet that is writing about the wonderful relationship between these incredible canines and their handlers. So I thought that was perfect when I saw that you were a poet. You're the best person to tell about it. And you actually went out on patrol with some of these teams. Tell us what that was like. Yeah.
Well, I got addicted to it at first. I have so much to say. Tell me if I start talking too fast because I'm so enthusiastic about this subject. Well, at first, my big worry was, what the heck are we going to talk about, for 12 hours on a shift? And as I said, I'm kind of shy. I am a poet, but that worry was completely unfounded because really across the board in whatever country I was in, they have so many stories of trauma, stories of rescue, stories of just crazy things that happen and near escapes and, difficult things. And these stories have no audience, they'll rescue somebody and then they'll just drive off and do the next thing. And so basically just being, riding shotgun, all I had to do was ask a few questions and listen. And they're just, natural storytellers. And then, of course, I got to train with the dogs and get to know the dogs as individuals. And that was just so amazing and fun, and to be in a really different world than my day-to-day life, which involves a lot of driving kids around and making lunches and that sort of thing. And so it was just like freedom for me to be out in their company. And, physically and mentally, I never will be able to do what they can do, but this is as close as I could get.
Wow, how wonderful to get to step into that world. Well, what would you say, Rachel, surprised you the most about these teams when you were spending time with them?
Well, there were a lot of things that were surprising. I guess one was I just had to confront kind of my own stereotypes about who the people were that did this police work, and so that was interesting for me. I didn't really think about that or where I picked those up, and then just to get to know people as individuals and what they think and their differences. So that was really great. And then I guess some wonderful things were just about how different teams in different countries find their dogs and raise their dogs. And I guess I was surprised also by how tender that relationship is. I think a lot of cops, because they really see people at their worst and they really are exposed to so much human suffering and trauma, they develop armor and they're really kind of guarded with the public, but they can, let down that guard with their dogs. And so they have this deep connection with them where they can just be exactly who they are without judgment. And so that was neat to witness. And really, I get that. I understand that, even though I don't have to have the same kind of armor.
Yeah. I know. It's hard to articulate that bond that they have, like you said, in those crisis situations that they find themselves all the time. And it just that bond and that dependence and trust with each other is just, wow. It's hard to articulate that.
Yeah, I heard from more than one canine officer that they forget sometimes that their dogs are not human, that they're that close. They talk to them and they just forget.
I get that, yep. I feel that way about Lovey, absolutely.
Yeah, I bet. Well, you have that, maybe that kind of close and constant bond as
24/7.
well.
24/7. It is something that, I really do depend on her for my safety, and it can be life-threatening sometimes. So not to the extent of canine officers. Certainly do not want to act like it is. It's a different type of working relationship, but I can only imagine what it is like for them. And I really loved how you covered canine teams in multiple countries, and United States, Canada, Britain, France. I was wondering, Rachel, how did you connect with these teams and get the opportunity to talk with them?
Well, at first it was really hard, and, what cred do I have? First of all, none. I'm a poet and not a journalist. And even if I were a journalist, actually, a lot of units or individual officers are kind of guarded, as I said. So it took a lot of persistence. But then once I was in and once I connected with a few different teams, it got easier and easier. And they actually would help me out once they saw that I was really listening to them and actually genuinely wanted to hear what their experience was like. Then they would introduce me to others. And then, to get into the unit in Paris, I do speak French and I'd been there before, but that was quite a challenge. They were so welcoming though, and they really wanted to, again, to have their stories out there in the world, to let people know what they do and let people see them. And I think that, most of us want that and would love to have the opportunity to be seen and to share what we know and what we experience. But especially for people who are dealing with trauma and violence and, right on the front line, they're the first responders so much of the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I love how you address in the book some really difficult topics, Rachel, where you really talk about, what we are hearing and seeing so much in the news these days about negative stories about law enforcement officers. And so I really appreciated how you did not shy away from that you really talk about that in the book, and you talk about the negative things and also the very positive, like you said, that people don't really know about and what these officers do, and then they go home or they go on to the next case, the next call. So it's pretty amazing and how you captured that. So was that challenging? Were you a little worried about that?
Yeah, I think it is challenging, and, I don't know what the reception will be, but I think that we tend to want things to be black or white or a simple story. So you're on one side or you're on the other side. And for me, as a poet, as a writer, there's more than one side, especially for something like policing. I think you can see every aspect of society in policing. You see what happens with people with mental illness, you see what happens around weapons, and you see the best and the worst, and it's all there. And, if you only look at it from one angle, you're really missing how complicated it is. And so I tried to get out of the way of the stories as much as possible and just let them speak, let them tell what they know, and trust my readers to come up with their own conclusions, that people can understand that society is complicated, that we're dealing with a lot of difficult things, and just to listen, to step back and listen.
Yeah, and it's our reality right now. Yeah, I really loved how you did that and you didn't shy away from it. That was really great. How many teams did you interview total? Do you even know?
Oh, my gosh.
I know it was a lot.
Some of them, even though they were fantastic, they didn't end up in the book. And to tell you the truth, I got kind of addicted to the ride-alongs and just to going out and meeting people and seeing what they did. And I was like, wow, I could keep going. I can, go to Japan. I know they have some police dogs that are poodles there, and I'd love to do that. And, Mexico. And I thought, okay, you need to stop. You have enough for several books already. And yeah, I was so interested because really there were a number of individual officers who could have written a full book just with what they knew.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, out of all of the teams that you talked with and worked with, which one or two sticks out the most in your memory?
Oh, my gosh. Well, Cade, for sure. He was the first dog that I took a bite from. Was an RCMP dog and really, really strong personality. So he had this ability to be totally on and totally aggressive. And you'll see in the book there's that picture of him with his teeth just bared, and he's vicious looking, but he could turn it off just instantly. So he was like, he had an on-off switch, a working dog and then not. And he was just this gorgeous, beautiful dog. And I spent a lot of time with him. I probably did more ride-alongs with him and Constable Daryl Morris than anybody. So that was pretty neat. And then also when I was in Paris, so the dog lover unit is a literal translation of the Brigade Cynophile. That means the dog lover unit in French. And a lot of their dogs are rescue dogs from high kill shelters, and so I got to know them. There was a dog, Jamanti, there, and she was rescued just before she was to be put down. I guess she was about 8 months old, and it was just so neat because those were the happiest working dogs I've seen. They were constantly smiling. They were just, they knew that they'd been given a second chance, and they just worked with like cheerful vigor. It was really so neat to see. And I loved spending time with them, even though they were doing really incredibly hard things and up against it.
Yeah, I know. It's so beautiful to see working dogs in action because they love it, and they're thrilled to do it. They know they're doing a great thing, and that you can tell it. It's all over their face. Like you said, they're smiling, they're excited. Yeah, it's so powerful to see them in action.
You were asking me about surprising things, and I think I'll just say quickly, when I started, I thought I might feel sorry for police dogs for what they have to face, and in the end, I felt, a little bit more sorry for my Maltipoo, my pet dog, because she doesn't really have a job,
Yeah.
She lounges around, and so I started doing a little bit of, training with her and just giving her more challenges at home. But I definitely feel like the working dogs are lucky. They're out there doing interesting things, and they love it.
Yeah, I know. When I'm at home and not going out so much, Lovey gets bored. If I'm not giving her work to do, and she'll start creating her own work because, like you said, they really want to do it, and it's who they are, and it's amazing their stamina and how they want to do it because they know that they're helping, and it's what they're all about. Yeah, so awesome.
And it's living up to their potential, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice for them to be able to do that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, our listeners have heard me say so many times, I think of working dogs as Olympic athletes. And I really do, because they are so fit. They are so at the top of their game, and honoring that and letting them do what they do is just so important and so beautiful.
That is a wonderful way to put it. And I think mentally as well as physically they're at the top of their game because they really have to think things through. And there's this kind of, when the police dogs are out actually after a suspect, they read their handlers. Like I've watched it happen, and they know what the situation demands. So they're really part of this elite team. Olympic athletes is a great way to put it.
Yeah, so impressive. Hey, so we're going to take just a quick break and hear some important messages from our sponsors who we love. And then we're going to come back and dive back in because we have a lot more to talk about, Rachel.
We'll be right back right after these messages. Stay tuned.
She was thrown out of a pickup truck.
Somebody threw him out of a car and shattered his leg.
They found her walking on the streets.
Many have been abused, malnourished, eating garbage.
Scabs, itching, licking, missing fur.
There's this commercial on TV that the ASPCA does. They want you to send in $19 a month for a dog in the shelter. I think you should go and adopt a dog from the ASPCA and then get that dog on Dinovite. DINOVITE.com.
You don't need to spend thousands on vet bills.
The answer is nutrition.
The omega-3 fatty acids.
Flaxseed, zinc, alfalfa. The digestive enzymes that are cooked out of regular dog food.
When you rescue a dog, you've got to feed him right for life. Every rescue deserves at least 90 days of Dinovite.
859-428-1000.
859-428-1000.
Dinovite is nutrition.
Dinovite for life.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Working Like Dogs on Pet Life Radio, and we're visiting today with poet and author Rachel Rose about her new book, The Dog Lover Unit, Lessons in Courage from the World's Canine Cops. And we've just been talking about these amazing animals, and I love how you wrote in the book, Rachel, that your work as a poet involves speaking out against injustice and oppression. And I just loved that and was hoping you could tell our listeners, what do you mean by that?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's really always been my value as a writer and a person to speak out against those who really can't, whether it's victims of a crime or abuse, or, there are so many ways that we can be hurt or that we can hurt each other. And so I've always wanted to do that. And for me, I was a bit afraid what it would mean to be in the company of canine teams, who are really the first responders to many violent incidents and who see victims, the worst day of their lives. And I was so moved for the officers that I met and that I got to know, they have such a strong sense of justice and injustice and right and wrong. And the cases that they can't solve, they are haunted by them. They, think about them again and again. They carry them with them, as I know many of the victims do as well. And so I wasn't expecting to find that commonality or that shared sense of injustice and fighting against it. And that was really healing for me and important for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. I know that is something. I mean, because they're experiencing such intense things, and I'm sure, as you said, it stays with them. And they're haunted by those things and want to, we hear of stories where, these cold cases where officers come back decades later and are still haunted by a case and trying to solve it. And how they do that with their canines is just so incredible. And you're doing a lot of work with other dog programs like courthouse dogs. Is that something that you're working with, Rachel?
Yeah, well, as I was writing the book, I interviewed victim services here at the RCMP, and then I got interested because, of course, as I said, the cops are the first responders there, and I got interested in an organization here called PADS, the Pacific Assistance Dogs, and they train dogs for victim services and court dogs. So when a person has to testify in court or when a child, they have to gather forensic evidence, the dogs are right there with them and supporting them through this really very difficult time. And so I just did the training for PADS, and I just went to their graduation, and not only do they do those victim services dogs, they also do dogs for people with disabilities. So they train them for people in the deaf community or people in wheelchairs. And I can't tell you, we were just sobbing. There were hundreds of people in the theater, and all the pups were graduating and going on stage and meeting the people that they'd work with. You understand this better than almost anyone, I'm sure, but these beautiful labs and retrievers, and I know they'll just make such a difference in people's lives, and they work with kids with autism too in families, and it's the best thing in the world, to see what they're capable of, and also to see that we've moved forward as a society and we're doing more to support victims and we're doing more to support children with special needs. And, I think the role for working dogs is growing, whether it's in the police units or in the schools. It's just a huge untapped resource, and we're just beginning.
I agree. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg at what dogs really can do and what we can do together as partners with dogs. And I just want to say we love the PADS program. It's an awesome program, and love Courthouse Dogs. And you're so right. That is just really is starting to take off, where there are a lot of dogs are becoming more common in courthouses throughout the country. And the agency that Lovey was trained from, they actually are very active in the courthouse dog movement and also train. And I just love to watch those dogs in action in the courthouses. It's so impressive. Like you said, how they go through the forensic interviews with children and how they're with them through the whole process as a support. And it is so moving to see that and how much support they can be for children in that horrible, horrible situation that they're having to deal with. Yeah, so beautiful. So what are you doing with PADS? You said you finished their volunteer training. What's your role going to be?
Oh, my gosh. Well, when I first approached them, I said, I want to give back. So I'm giving 5% of my profits from the book to PADS, and I hope that it will buy them at least one victim services dog or court dog or any dog, that can help people. And so that's my first goal. But then I started thinking, well, I want to do more than that and just spend more time with their dogs. And so I'm looking at how I can best do that, and whether it will be, raising a puppy after I'm finished touring the book, because I have to be able to be home, or doing some social media and other related work with them and for them. But I am so glad that organizations like PADS exist. They make all the difference in the world for people. Yeah.
Yes, they do. They do. They change so many lives. And there are other unsung heroes like the canine officers that do so much and behind the scenes that rarely get the attention that they deserve for that. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're finding all kinds of, and I'm sure PADS will definitely find ways for you to work with them and volunteer with them. So that's so great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the beginning of a wonderful relationship.
Sounds like it. Yeah. Well, you wrote in the book that, and I thought this, again, sounded like a poet. It's so beautiful. You wrote in the book that you went to the dogs seeking courage, and that's how you approached this project. Can you share with us about how you found that courage, Rachel, after spending time with these incredible teams?
Yeah, I would love to share that, because I think that other people can also benefit from what I learned. So I'm not going to speak in detail about it, but I also was a victim, a child victim, and that sort of came up as I was going through the ride-alongs and seeing what the officers see. And, I was also at a point in my life where I felt a little bit stuck. I was, 3 young kids. I was taking care of them all the time. I was just on this treadmill and really kind of anxious and not living the life that I wanted to live, and not really sure how to change it. And so when I went to Alberta, to Innisfail, and watched the new recruits who had maybe worked for 5, 6, 7 years just to get in there, and then 180 days where they had to work with their new dogs and learn everything they needed to know to become RCMP police dog handlers. And I just saw that kind of grit and courage. So they had these long-term goals way down the road, years away, and then these short-term goals. Every day they would train the dogs, they'd go out, they'd take bites from the dogs, they would just work and follow their dreams. And for me, it was incredibly helpful and inspiring to be around people who had that kind of grit, that pure grit that I am going to pursue my dreams and I'm not going to be stopped. Obstacles are going to be thrown in my path, but I will figure out how to overcome them. And they did that when, they were having issues with the young dogs in training, and they'd have to look within themselves often, like, okay, so why am I not able to communicate with my dog in the way I want? And so there were a lot of chances for them to give up, and they didn't. They would push through. And to be around that kind of energy just shifted the way I dealt with failure and adversity in my own life. And it was just amazing. And it was also interesting because I had to do something harder to sort of get out of that rut I was in. I had to do something really totally beyond my comfort level and outside my normal experience. And so I think that was the takeaway for me. If you're really stuck, don't keep doing what you have been doing that isn't working, but really make a big shift and do something harder that's very, very different. And I was able to do that in the company of these teams and traveling around the world to meet them.
That's a huge life lesson. I mean, that really is. That's huge. That's talk about an aha moment. That's really... Yeah, that's really impactful. And I can only imagine how awe-inspiring it was to be around that kind of determination, that sheer determination day after day.
Yeah, it really made me think, as I said, differently about how I face obstacles. And you see people who, even with the way they look at unsolved crimes, they're like their dogs. They're tenacious. They keep following the track. Okay, you hit a dead end, but you don't give up. You're going to find another way. You're going to, keep it in mind, keep turning it over. And yeah, it was absolutely a life lesson.
Wow. Well, Rachel, I can't thank you enough for writing this book and for being with us to share it with us because it's so beautiful. I mean, your words, the way you have described the work that's being done, the relationships between the officers and their canines, it's beautiful. And thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I hope all of our listeners will get their copy and read it. And I'm guessing, how can they get it, Rachel? How can they get a copy?
Well, it launches next week, October 10th, and you can get it Barnes & Noble, Amazon, your local bookstore, really anywhere. And yes, I hope that it will do well enough to get a few dogs for pads, service dogs for pads, and I just am so grateful to you for giving me a chance to talk about the book, and so grateful also to the officers who opened up and shared the realities of their lives with me.
Yeah, we definitely want to honor them. Absolutely. Every day it does. Absolutely. And we're reminded of that as we turn on the news each day of how important they are to us. Yes, yes. So definitely a big honor to them and to you. Thank you so much, Rachel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I really hope I'll have a chance to meet you and your dog in person.
Yeah.
She sounds like a real hero, Lovey. Yeah.
She is. She's a cutie pie. And you'll have to come back and tell us about your work with pads. We would love to hear that.
I would love to. I would love to do that.
Okay, we'll hold you to that. Okay. Well, thanks, Rachel, and thank you, our listeners, for being with us. We love spending this time with you and talking about working dogs and working animals, and we also love hearing from you. So please keep your emails coming, and you can email me at Marcie, Marcie, at PetLifeRadio.com. We also love staying connected with you through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can find Working Like Dogs there. And we love seeing your photos of your working dogs and hearing about all the incredible work that they're doing with you every day. So thanks so much for being with us, and we look forward to being with you again soon. Take good care.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.